Hi there, my name is Yuri, and we're going to examine another dreadful case today. In your presence, Mansfield, Texas, a town outside Fort Worth, was in existence in 1995, approximately 8,000. Nonetheless, at that time, the city was experiencing increasing difficulties comparable to those faced by other cities. Gang and drug offenses are prevalent in the vicinity of Fort Worth. Adrienne Jessica Jones was a teenager who spent time in Mansfield in 1995. Adrienne Jessica Jones was a remarkable young person who made an impact in her community. Her beauty and exceptional abilities made her a favorite among those around her at the age of 16. Qualities: she was a hard worker dedicated to her studies and an avid sports fan, a role model for a significant portion of the population. Mansfield High School's Adrienne Jessica Jones, a 16-year-old junior, was in her prime in 1995. Right from the start, she was a beloved person on campus. Despite her flaws, she was recognized by her peers and teachers for her kind-heartedness, intelligence, and infectious enthusiasm, the spirit. Academic success was enjoyed by Adrienne Jessica Jones. Her academic performance was consistently exceptional, with a focus on advanced honors classes that were demanding and thought-provoking, to succeed and excel in her endeavors. Despite her busy schedule, Adrienne managed to study for at least 2 hours each night. To guarantee her success, her hard work and dedication paid off, resulting in her consistently high grades. Following her graduation from Mansfield High School, Adrienne had ambitious plans to pursue a career in veterinary medicine, provide assistance to animals. Adrienne's academic achievements were overshadowed by her exceptional athletic abilities. She was a member of the girls' soccer team and displayed exceptional dexterity and dedication on the field. She was forced to leave the team due to an unfortunate injury sustained during a game. Rather than abandoning her passion, she became a member of the girls' cross-country team. Adrienne's decision to become a member of the cross-country team allowed her to stay active. She was able to improve her physical fitness with their assistance. Adrienne Jessica Jones took the new challenge seriously and worked hard to improve her physical condition. Health and fitness are closely linked. Her hard work and dedication paid off, leading to her rapid rise as a significant contributor across the nation. A member of the team, Adrienne Jessica Jones not only excelled in her academic and athletic pursuits, but also had a remarkable impact on the team. The workload is not limited to the classroom setting. While pursuing her studies, she worked 20 hours a week at Swiss-style fast food joints in the area. Golden Chicken. Adrienne was able to thrive on attention, particularly from the teenage boys in close proximity to Mansfield. She was labeled as a big flirt by one of her closest friends. For a minimum of 2 hours daily, she would meticulously apply her makeup, making sure it was flawless. She looked flawless. Like most teenagers, Adrienne challenged her parents' boundaries despite her good nature. Mansfield's parents were very protective of her, and she had 2 younger brothers. Changes were taking place, and crime was on the rise in the area. To ensure her safety, her parents enforced a strict curfew for her on weekends, stopping her from leaving until just after 9 p.m. The importance of safety, in case Adrienne shared with her parents any plans, such as going to a theme park or viewing an anime. She was required to provide a ticket stub as proof of purchase for the movie. Moreover, Adrienne's father made the decision to nail her down as a means of stopping her from sneaking out. Closed the window in the bedroom. It was rare, but there were a few occasions when she ventured outside her house. She arrived in the middle of the night to meet her friends. On December 3, 1995, Adrienne was granted permission to stay on by her parents on Sunday. She was awake at night to have a conversation with Tracy Smith, her boyfriend. Despite being away from Tracy's parents for the weekend, Adrienne was eager to engage in conversation with him. To him, Adrienne's mother heard her daughter tell Tracy about something during the phone call. Another call was coming in. The caller who contacted Adrienne was identified as David by his mother, her cross-country team member. Adrienne stated that David appeared to be upset. The next morning, Adrienne's family woke up and made arrangements for their normal workday. Adrienne's alarm going off caused his mother to become concerned. In her doppelganger, Adrienne's mother was anxious about why she hadn't turned off her alarm, so she went to investigate. Despite the absence of Adrian, his mother was nowhere to be found in their bedroom. She had not yet made her bed. There was no indication of sleeping in it the night before. Adrian's mother tried to keep her composure when she realized that her 16-year-old daughter was out of touch with him, had vanished. At first, she thought Adrian might have been running in the morning. Her assumption was quickly dispelled when she stumbled upon her daughter's running shoes, positioned on the floor of the bedroom. Adrian had a history of leaving the house in the middle of the night on certain occasions to meet up with friends. Adrian's mother was concerned as she had never been up all night before. The parents were concerned about their daughter and called the police, unaware that miles away they had been. A man had made a horrifying discovery on his farm while traveling. About 10 miles from Mansfield on Seton Road in Grand Prairie, Texas, at approximately 7 a.m., a man discovered a distressing discovery. He was walking to his mailbox when he noticed the gate on his property had been knocked down. The man, feeling intrigued, walked over to the farm where he came face to face with something. The man initially thought the lump on the ground was a sign of roadkill. He came to the realization that he was paying attention to something more profound as a matter of fact. This is a sinister manifestation. He was surrounded by the corpse of a dead teenage girl. The man immediately contacted the police after finding the deceased person's body on the farmland. The police were confronted with a disturbing scene upon their arrival. The teenager had been shot twice, with gunshot wounds on her left cheek and forehead also present. It was evident that the killing was executed in a manner similar to an execution. In addition, the police officers stated that the teenager had suffered significant injuries to the head. The teenager was not only shot and injured in the head, but also had other visible injuries reported to the police. Her arms and legs were covered in scrapes and bruises. These injuries were caused by her running through the barbed wire gate at the front of the farm. She had fought and struggled to survive. The teenager's nighttime attire was even more unsettling. Her life turned out to be tragic, as if she had intended to go to bed. The officers were curious about the possible link between the incident and drugs or gang activity. The manner in which the murder was carried out. The Grand Prairie police were alerted to the discovery of the murdered teenager's body on the farm. Immediately took action and dispatched a teletype to all local authorities. The teletype presented the basic depiction of the young girl's body, which included her approximate form, physical traits such as age, height, weight, and more. The objective was to disseminate this information and raise awareness, with the expectation that a different agency would be of assistance, a person who is not the same as the victim in Grand Prairie. Shortly after, the Grand Prairie officers were contacted by the Mansfield police. The Mansfield police were able to identify the teenager who was killed through their investigation, in the same way that Adrian Jones did. After the police identified the deceased teenager in Grand Prairie as Adrian, the next course of action was to take legal action to bring to her panicked parents the tragic turn. Adrian's mother disintegrated after the police informed her that their daughter had been killed. The smallness of Mansfield led to the immediate news of Adrian's murder. She was a member of the classmates and friends at Mansfield High School. Adrian's death caused the halls to reverberate, and classes were canceled while his funeral was being held. Peers shared in tears. The discovery of Adrian's body in Mansfield resulted in a furious reaction from the residents. Jones in a field. There were speculations of possible explanations for her tragic passing. It was widely believed that she had some connection to drugs. There were doubts among some individuals regarding the possibility of a serial killer in their vicinity. Adrian's parents reported to the police on the last occasion they had seen their daughter. Her mother recounted a phone conversation between Adrian and her partner, Tracy. Another teenager, David, called her during the same phone call. The mother stated that Adrian's younger brother heard the sound of a car coming from behind him. The engine was located outside the house after midnight. The brother looked out and saw a pickup truck leaving the scene. David's call to Adrian on the night that led to him being arrested was of great interest to the police. She was slain. Adrian's cross-country coach was the source of further information they sought. Adrian's coach stated that David Graham was a part of the team. In spite of this, the coach was surprised to learn that David would have been calling. Due to her lack of belief in the relationship between Adrian and David, Adrian was not a good match for him, an all-American adolescent, David Graham. Upon witnessing his first air show at the age of 7, David shared with his father his aspiration to become a doctor, an Air Force pilot. From that point on, he was committed to realizing his dream. David was a popular figure among the students of Mansfield High School. His charisma was evident, and he always had a good time. Diane Zamora, a senior in high school, was the one who caught his eye after seeing many girls. Diane was distinct and unappealing. He shared David's aspiration to join the military one day and actively pursued her dream. David Graham was interviewed by the police in the days following Adrian's murder. David revealed that he had been acquainted with Adrian since their time on the cross-country team. He maintained that their relationship had never evolved beyond being just friends. The police interrogated David about whether he had communicated with Adrian during the interview, on the night of her demise. He firmly rejected the accusation, asserting that he had been studying at home with his partner, Diane Zamora, the girlfriend of the person in question. The police scrutinized the case and identified David as a possible suspect. The homicide of Adrian. Adrian's friends were consulted as part of the investigation to gather information. In the event that she had talked about David, her best friend disclosed to the authorities that she was aware of Adrian's confidential nature. David had never been a point of contact with her. Moreover, the police investigation of Adrian's phone book revealed that David's number was also present. The text was not transcribed. This discovery further solidified their belief that David was not involved in Adrian's actions. He was never given a polygraph test for his murder. As a result, the police dropped David from their list of potential suspects. Following David, the police investigated the next suspect in connection with Adrian's murder. Tracy Smith was the person she was in a relationship with. The police were able to confirm Tracy's alibi after he and his family went out together on the night of the homicide. In addition, Tracy underwent a polygraph test and was validated by the results. His innocence is undeniable. During Tracy Smith's interview with the police, he disclosed the name of an individual. He held the belief that there should be an investigation into the person responsible for Adrian's murder. According to Tracy, she had told him about someone named Adrian on the night he was killed, Brian, who had contacted them while they were on the phone. Brian's identity was investigated by the police. They found out that the individual in question was a teenager named Brian from the area. The person in question is McMillian. A discovery was made by the police during their investigation of Brian McMillian. It was revealed that Brian had worked in a pharmacy near the restaurant where Adrian used to work. Adrian had captured Brian's attention while Brian was working. It was common for Brian to go into the restaurant and see her. Adrian's boredom with his constant presence led to him hiding in the back. Whenever she saw him approaching, the police spoke with Brian McMillian about the murder of Adrian Jones and initially denied his involvement in the incident. Any knowledge of her. Brian later disclosed that he was acquainted with her. During the interview, Brian was asked by an officer whether he had spoken to Adrian on the night before. He professed to have no memory of her murder. He was reportedly drunk on the night of the murder because Brian was in depression, as per his statement. Uncertainty and a sense of loneliness. Brian was asked by an officer if he had visited Adrian's house on the night of her murder. He admitted that he could have had it. The police officers inquired of Brian's father if Brian could take a selfie after the interview. The polygraph test was declined by Brian's father. The officers stormed Brian's house armed with firearms a week after he was interviewed by the police, armed with firearms. The decision was made with great care as there was uncertainty surrounding the outcome. The question of whether Brian had a gun at the time of his arrest is still up in the air. The police suspected that Brian had a weapon and wanted to arrest him. All necessary measures have been taken to ensure the safety of both individuals and all parties involved. Following Brian's arrest for the murder of Adrian, a multitude of individuals came forward to accuse him, offer their apprehension for him. He was known by his friends as a gentle and non-violent individual. Moreover, Brian's father attested that he was present at home the entire time Adrian was in the room. The individual was killed and remained in the house without leaving. Brian was incarcerated for 3 weeks, which included missing Christmas and New Year's, in anticipation of his release. Further scrutiny and legal proceedings. During this time, the district attorney's office made arrangements for Brian to take a polygraph test. He successfully passed the test. The district attorney's office was left with minimal evidence after this outcome to establish a connection between Brian and Adrian's murder and release him from confinement. After 9 months of investigating Adrian's murder, the police in Mansfield, Texas finally succeeded. The necessary break arrived from Annapolis, Maryland, where Diane Zamora was residing, visiting the Naval Academy. The officers from the Naval Academy were informed that Diane Zamora had admitted to some offenses. She and her boyfriend, David Graham, are among the cadets who have returned to Mansfield, Texas, had caused the death of a young girl, Adrian Jones. In Annapolis, Maryland, the police officers from Mansfield conducted an interview with Diane. Farther, Diane refuted any such admission in the interview. After examining the matter, the Naval Academy suspended her and sent her home. The matter at hand is into. Due to the police's inability to contact Diane, they journeyed to Colorado Springs, David Graham to be interviewed by Colorado at the Air Force Academy. During the police interview, David expressed uncertainty about why Diane would create a monster, the account of the assassination of Adrian Jones. During the interview, David began to crack and request to write a statement. A 4.5-page confession letter was written by David, detailing how he came to know Diane, the girlfriend of Adrian Jones, had planned to take his life. In the letter, David wrote about a cross-country event where he decided to offer his services. In November 1995, Adrienne was driven home by a car. They engaged in sexual activity while parked in an elementary school parking lot during the ride. David acknowledges feeling a great deal of guilt after this incident. He was guilty for a reason that was easy to explain. His girlfriend Diane was deeply in love with him, and he knew that his actions would result in immense pain for her. Pain is a form of mental anguish. David and Diane had a disagreement while David was helping Diane prepare for the SATs on an evening. David was unable to cope with the guilt and chose to confess his unfaithfulness. He sat on the couch and broke down in tears, telling Diane that he had not remained faithful to her. Afterwards, he recounted his association with Adrienne. Diane was informed by David that he had been unfaithful to her, and Adrienne was unable to cope. Her heart was shattered by the betrayal, leaving her feeling deeply hurt and outraged. Diane became increasingly angry and argued with David, screaming at him. She longed for Adrian's death and harbored strong feelings of hatred towards him. Diane was so emotional that she found it difficult to make sense of what had occurred. To salvage their relationship, David admitted to telling Diane that he would do whatever she wanted. He stated that he and Diane came to the realization that their love could only be realized in one way, restored in its rightful place: the murder of Adrian Jones. In his confession letter, David mentioned that he had called Adrian Jones and Mr. Jones on December 3rd, asserted her to leave her house late at night to have a conversation. He asked Adrian to keep the meeting private and only discussing it with him. David's initial response was to simply leave Adrian alone, break her neck, and then proceed with his next move: eliminate her corpse by dropping it in a lake. Adrian was picked up by David in his car at 2:30 a.m. They were accompanied by Diane, who was hiding in the hatchback. After reaching a remote area 10 miles out of town, David left the highway and proceeded to turn onto the road, the seat, and the roadway. Adrienne made a slight adjustment to her seat as David pulled over on the shoulder of the road, giving the impression that she and David were going to be in a soft kiss. Diane was summoned by David from the trunk in secret. After exiting the vehicle, Diane climbed out of the bonnet and went towards the front of it, a vehicle. She approached Adrienne, who was sitting in the passenger seat, and confronted her. Upon seeing Adrienne, Diane confronted her and used David's weight to strike the woman in the head. A fitness equipment. Adrienne sustained serious injuries, but did not die. Adrienne was able to crawl out of David's car window and flee. David and Diane were in a state of panic, prompting David to grab his Makarov 9mm pistol and pursue Adrienne. Adrienne suffered severe head injuries and collapsed due to her injuries in a nearby field. After catching up with Adrienne, David returned to his car and shot her twice before coming back. The first words that came out of Adrienne's mouth were shared between Diana and David. "I have affection for you." The police came back to Diane, who was still unconscious when David admitted to killing Adrienne, had a confession statement of her own. The authorities apprehended David and Diane and charged them with capital murder. Despite this, both parties later repudiated their confessions, and David maintained that Diane had committed the crime. Diane and herself argued that David had done the crime alone. The court was petitioned by Adrienne's mother in 1998 to impose the death penalty. The option of being removed is available to David and Diane. In February of that year, Diane's trial commenced. Diane was reported by multiple witnesses to have shown no remorse for the murder as testified in court. The name given is Adrienne Jones. On February 17th, the jury convicted Diane of capital murder. Diane was automatically sentenced to life in prison after being found guilty, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. The jury found David Graham guilty of the murder of Adrienne Jones. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Hello everyone, my name is Yuri, and today we're going to look at another horrific case. On a sunny afternoon in Boynton Beach, Florida, a man named Muhammad came into the police station with a disturbing story. He stated that he had been approached by a woman named Dahlia with a strange request. According to Muhammad, Delilah approached him with an offer to hire him to commit a murder. However, Muhammad failed to disclose one important thing: Delilah's last name. Despite the minimal details, the Boynton Beach Police Department believed Muhammad's story to be true and launched an investigation. After receiving information about a woman who wanted to kill her husband, we're faced with the challenge of identifying the mysterious Delilah and finding out who her husband was. To gather more information, they decided to use their witness, Muhammad, to arrange a meeting with the woman. The detectives chose the mobile gas station as a suitable meeting place based on Muhammad's statement that Delilah lived nearby. At the mobile gas station where Muhammad and the woman agreed to meet, detectives set up several cars to conduct surveillance of the meeting. Prior to the woman's arrival, the detectives prepared Muhammad for what he was to say to the woman. They discreetly placed a wire with a voice recorder on Muhammad, which allowed them to overhear his conversation with the woman. As the detectives continued their surveillance of the mobile gas station, to Muhammad's conversation with a woman named Delilah, detectives were caught off guard by the woman's appearance, which did not fit the typical profile of someone who wants her husband dead. Dressed in a skirt and tank top, she looked quite attractive. The attractive woman entered the car with Muhammad, who voiced that he could not believe she was dragging him into a contract killing. Muhammad asked if it was worth it to kill someone. Delilah replied that it was because she couldn't file for divorce. She was afraid her husband would come after her if she tried to end their marriage permanently. The woman said that after her husband's murder would have occurred, she planned to go to another place, such as Boca Raton, to provide an alibi. Muhammad then asked the woman if anyone would suspect her after her husband's death, to which she replied that no one would point a finger at me. While the detectives listened to Muhammad's conversation with the woman who wanted to order her husband's murder, they were shocked at the way the woman behaved. The way she talked casually about hiring a hitman to kill her husband sent shivers down their spine. The detectives continued to listen to Muhammad's conversation with the woman. She showed Muhammad pictures of her husband to show what the target looked like. Detectives were shocked that the woman blatantly ignored the consequences of her actions. Her casual demeanor and tone gave the impression that she was discussing a simple business transaction rather than orchestrating someone's death. During the conversation, the woman made a shocking confession to Muhammad. The woman revealed that she had intended to give the hitman a deposit to kill her husband. This confession was a significant breakthrough for the detective because it confirmed her involvement in soliciting the murder. However, The detective realized that more evidence needed to be gathered to strengthen the case. She offered to pay Mohammed $1,000 in cash and give it to him at a more evening time. After the woman finished talking to Mohammed about hiring a hitman to kill her husband, she returned to her vehicle and left the gas station. Detectives followed the woman home to gather information about her residence. A records check revealed that the address belonged to Dalia DePolito, not Delilah as previously believed. Encouraged by this new information, detectives checked the vehicle that Dalia used to drive to the gas station to meet Mohammed. This allowed them to learn the name of the registered owner, her husband, Mike DePolito. To Mike and Dalia's friends, they seemed to be in love and were a happy couple. The couple met when Mike was at work, bored and looking for something to occupy himself to pass the time. Browsing the internet, he found a website offering escort services and decided to book one of them. Little did he realize that this decision would change his life forever. When his escort arrived, Mike was instantly mesmerized by her beauty. He thought she was stunning and couldn't help but feel the spark between them. Their connection was instantaneous, and they found themselves engaged in a friendly conversation. Over the next couple of days, Mike and Dalia's friendship grew stronger and stronger. They saw each other again, this time spending a whole weekend together. They had fun together, and they quickly realized that there was a special bond between them, more than just friendship. From that moment on, Mike and Dalia became a stable couple. Mike and Dalia's relationship took an unexpected turn a few months into their acquaintance when they were looking at engagement rings at a local jewelry store. This unexpected encounter sparked a conversation about marriage, which they had previously discussed. Intrigued by the idea of spending a lifetime together, Mike decided to buy a ring for Dalia to symbolize his commitment to their future. Although their relationship was progressing at a rapid pace, Mike was deep in his heart happy and in love. Before Mike met Dalia, he had been in prison in 2001 for grand larceny, fraud, and false telephone sales. He was sentenced in Broward County, Florida, 2 years after committing his first offenses. At the time, Mike was using drugs and needed money, which he later admitted was no excuse for what he did. Mike was sentenced to 2 years on the charge and 28 years probation. The court gave him this long probation in order to give him time to repay the money he stole. However, when he returned home, Mike had no idea how he would repay the debt. Determined to repay the debt, Mike took a job as a cook at a restaurant. He was making approximately $350 a week, which of course was not enough to pay off a significant amount of his debt. Mike wanted to improve his financial situation so that he could pay off his debt and get released from probation. A friend of Mike's offered him a job at an office just 4 blocks from his home, which allowed him to transition from working as a cook to marketing. When Mike and Dalia began a relationship, Mike eventually talked about his probation and informed Dalia of the restrictions on his movement. He explained that if he had to leave the state, he would need to get permission from the police. Dalia, who had a strong desire to travel, expressed a desire to explore the world with Mike. Dalia approached Mike with an offer to help him get out of his debts. She offered to give him $91,000. If he would provide the remaining amount, it would allow them to start a new life that Dalia dreamed of, full of traveling. At the time, Dalia was working as a real estate agent and earning very well. This financial stability allowed Dalia to help Mike pay off his debts and clear his name. Mike contacted his attorney to see what to do about the situation. The attorney advised Mike to raise the remaining funds, and then he would be released from probation. After consulting with the attorney, Dalia and Mike decided that putting the money in Dalia's bank account at Bank of America would be best. Dalia's bank account at Bank of America would be the most convenient and secure way. Mike was thrilled, as he had recently gotten married and was on probation. One day he received a text message from Dalia saying she had sent money to his attorney from her bank account. Mike contacted his attorney to inquire about or whether the money had arrived. However, to his disappointment, the lawyer informed Mike that he had not yet received the wire transfer from Dalia. Frustrated, Mike decided to wait another day before asking Dalia about the wire transfer again. However, when he asked her, she insisted that she had sent it. Feeling increasingly anxious, Mike decided to contact his attorney again. Unfortunately, the lawyer confirmed that they still hadn't arrived in his bank account. Dahlia informed Mike that she had indeed sent the money to his attorney, but unfortunately, she did not understand the reason for the delay and why the attorney still had not received the funds transfer. It had been 2 days since the transaction, and the attorney still had not received the money. Mike then informed Dahlia that he would appreciate it if she would tell him where she had sent the money. He explained that he needed the receipt to verify the details of the transaction. However, Dahlia had a different theory. She suggested that perhaps the lawyer had stolen the money. Dahlia told Mike that she intended to find the missing money. Meanwhile, Mike hoped that he and Dahlia could put the misunderstanding behind them. The chief of the Boynton Beach Police Department contacted undercover officer Sergeant Whitey Jean, asked for his help. Sergeant Whitey Jean met with the detective working on the Dahlia DiPolito case. The detective explained the case and informed Sergeant Whitey Jean that Dahlia wanted to hire a hitman to kill her husband. The detective explained to Sergeant Whitey Jean that Dahlia was expecting a phone call from the hitman. They asked Sergeant Whitey Jean if he would be willing to play the role of a hitman and hold a meeting with Dahlia. Sergeant Whitey Jean agreed to assist in the investigation and decided to play the role of a hitman. Sergeant Whitey Jean, posing as a hitman, contacted Dahlia and demanded an upfront payment of $3,000 and a key to her house. The detective asked for her house key as part of his plan to trick Dahlia into believing that the murder would take place in her home. However, Dahlia was unhappy with this development and contacted Mohammed, the informant, to express her concern. During the phone conversation between Mohammed and Dahlia, the detective eavesdropped. They were afraid they might have spooked her. They feared that Dahlia might change her mind and find someone else to kill her husband. On August 3rd, 2099, Dahlia met with Sergeant Whitey Jean, who was an undercover hitman, in the CVS parking lot. However, Dahlia did not bring any money with her, causing Sergeant Whitey Jean to wait to be paid until after the murder. She has to give him $7,000 in cash. Sergeant Whitey Jean also mentioned that he was planning a murder on Wednesday morning. Since there have been several burglaries in the area, he told Dahlia that he plans to stage a break-in. To make the murder look realistic, Sergeant Whitey Jean told Dahlia that he planned to break into the house. He would then shoot Mike twice in the head. Sergeant Whitey Jean informed Dahlia that he would wait a couple days to contact her after her husband's murder, as he knew the police would be watching her closely after such a horrific crime. However, Sergeant Whitey Jean assured Dahlia that the delay was necessary to avoid suspicion and to keep things under wraps. During his conversation with Dahlia, Sergeant Whitey Jean gave her every chance to recant the hired murder. Dahlia confidently stated that she was 5,000% sure of her decision, indicating that her decision had been made and that she was completely willing to kill her husband. Dahlia told Sergeant Whitey Jean that Mike walked his dog at a certain time each morning and left the house unlocked. This information was crucial to her plan to deceive him and ensure the success of the murder. She informed Sergeant Whitey Jean that she would be going to the gym at the time of the murder, promising that she would be absent when he entered her house. Sergeant Whitey Jean told Dahlia to go to the gym by 6 o'clock in the morning and said that he would enter her house at 6:30 in the morning. After his conversation with Dahlia, the sergeant said her anger shocked him. The sergeant had encountered many people in his job, but none of them possessed the level of viciousness that Dahlia did. The detective decided it was necessary to create a false crime scene at Dahlia and Mike's house to elicit Dahlia's reaction. On the day of the alleged assault, at approximately 5:30 in the morning, Dahlia informed Mike that she was going to the gym. Mike responded that this was odd because she had never gone to the gym that early before. He ignored it, however, and continued on with his morning routine. The detective kept surveillance on Dahlia to make sure she made it to the gym and went inside. This evidence gave the detective the confirmation he needed to continue with his plans. However, before everything could be set up at Mike and Dahlia's house, there was one important detail that needed to be addressed. The detective had to notify Mike DiPolito of the situation. About half an hour after Dahlia left for the gym, A loud knock sounded at Mike and Dahlia's house, causing Mike to run to the door. To his surprise, there were several police officers standing on the doorstep. Confused and worried, Mike asked the police officers what was going on. A detective stepped forward and informed Mike that his wife had tried to hire a hitman, but the man was actually an undercover cop who had been paid to kill him. He went on to explain to Mike that the whole situation had been carefully planned to make it look like a real hired assassination. Mike was in a state of shock and panic after the police officers informed him that his wife, Dahlia, was trying to hire a hitman to kill him. When the initial shock passed, the detectives told him that time was running out and he needed to leave the house immediately. They took him to the police station. At Mike and Dahlia's home, the detectives staged the crime scene by covering it with tape and turned on the headlights of the police car to create a realistic appearance of a crime in progress. Once the house was prepared, the detective contacted Dahlia to inform her that the police were at her home and wanted to speak with her about the incident at her home. The detective asked Dahlia to come to the home for questioning. After speaking with the detective, Dahlia returned home and saw that her home was surrounded by crime scene tape and there were police cars everywhere. She asked the detective what was going on, and the detective told her that they had received a report of suspicious activity in her home. The report also included gunshots, and the detective told her that a search of her home resulted in the discovery of a body. The body of her husband, Mike, was discovered as a result of a search of the house. This news came as a crushing and shocking blow to Dahlia. She immediately burst into tears as she realized the reality of her husband's death. The detective, who had experience with death alerts, noticed that Dahlia's reaction seemed unusual to him. Although she was crying, the detective noticed that there were no tears. At the police station, the detective began the interview by asking Dahlia about possible suspects involved in her husband's death. The detective's goal was to get Dahlia to confess that she had hired a hitman to kill him. The detective informed Dahlia that her husband had been shot twice in the head. Dahlia expressed her belief that Mike would never have opened the door to a stranger. She mentioned that Mike was on probation for stock fraud and was trying his best to avoid probation. Dahlia stated that there have been issues in the community regarding Mike's attempts to get off probation. People were not supportive of his impending release because of how much money he owed. She also insisted that there were no problems in their marriage. While the police questioned Dahlia about who might have killed her husband, Mike stood in another room and watched. The detective questioning Dahlia informed her that they were about to get down to business and informed her that they knew the truth about her husband's murder. They then brought in Sergeant Whitey Jean, who was handcuffed, and asked Dahlia if she knew him or had seen him before. Dahlia vigorously denied that she did not know or had ever seen Sergeant Whitey Jean. After Sergeant Whitey Jean was removed from the room, the detective informed Dahlia that she was under arrest for her involvement in her husband's murder. The detective also informed her that the man she had hired to kill her husband was actually an undercover police officer. Dahlia was arrested. While Dahlia was in custody, the police decided to give Mike, Dahlia's husband whom she had tried to kill, a chance to see her. Upon seeing him, Dahlia tried to call him to her. However, Mike refused, stating that he could not fix the situation in her mind. He wanted her to confess to trying to kill him, but Dahlia continued to stubbornly deny her guilt. On April 26, 2011, the trial of Dahlia DePolito took place at the Palm Beach County Courthouse. The charges were related to Dahlia's alleged attempt to commit the murder of her husband, Mike, by another man's hands. During the trial, Mike took the stand as a witness against Dahlia. His testimony lasted 3 days. Dahlia's defense argued that the entire plan to kill Mike was actually a publicity stunt for a television reality show. According to her, Mike agreed to participate in the television show and was the mastermind behind the plan. However, Mike denied knowledge of or involvement in the plan. During his deposition, Mike stated that he was not interested in participating in the reality show. He denied Dahlia's claims and emphasized that he would never spend his money or put himself in danger for such a purpose. Mike also stated that he did not know or participate in Dalia's alleged plot to kill him. After the defense and prosecution presented their case, the jury began deliberating. Finally, after several hours of careful deliberation, they rendered a guilty verdict against Dalia on the charge of solicitation to commit first-degree murder with a firearm. At the announcement of the verdict, the courtroom erupted in cheers and murmurs. Mike, who attended the trial, had mixed emotions. On the one hand, he was relieved to learn that Dalia would be serving a 20-year prison sentence for her crimes. It was a fair outcome, given the severity of her actions. However, Mike also felt that the case was closed. He could finally move on with his life, knowing that justice had been served. However, after Dalia was found guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder with a firearm, her attorneys appealed, arguing that the jury's verdict was tainted by a juror's remark that Dalia had tried to poison Mike's drink from Starbucks. However, the remark never became evidence at trial, and the jury was only allowed to evaluate the evidence presented in the courtroom. The appeals court overturned Dalia's conviction, ruling that she was entitled to a new trial. Mike couldn't believe that Dalia was facing a second trial after being convicted of trying to kill him. When the state proceeded with the second trial in December of 2016, they were confident in the facts that proved that Dalia had instigated the murder of her husband. However, much to the state's disappointment, the jury came to a unanimous verdict. The judge then called a recess. In June of 1773, Dalia Dippolito awaited her third trial. After a trial, the jury reached a verdict within 90 minutes, finding Dalia guilty and sentencing her to 16 years in prison. In September of 1919, the Florida Supreme Court denied, without comment, the petition of Dalia Dippolito's request to reconsider her 2017-year sentence. Following the sentencing, Dalia's defense team attempted to have her case heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. However, in February of 2022, the court declined to hear the case. Dalia Dippolito's attorney told the media that the ongoing trial has not diminished their determination to overturn Dalia's conviction. They said they plan to file a motion with a federal judge asking for a third trial to be reviewed for constitutional violations on Dalia's behalf. According to the attorney, this will be their last chance to get a new trial for Dalia. According to the attorney, despite serving her sentence, Dalia has become highly respected in prison because of her unwavering faith. They claim that behind bars, Dalia leads a Bible study circle, which has earned her praise from fellow inmates. Before Dalia went to prison, she had a young son who visited her regularly. However, due to circumstances, her son is now living with his grandmother until Dalia serves her time. This separation has been very difficult for Dalia as she misses being with her son very much, her lawyer said. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Hi there, this is Drake. A case that shook Argentina today will be shared with you. On Sunday, September 15th, 2019, two fishermen were engaged in their daily work near the aqueduct, the Neuquén province's breakwaters in Argentina. The Lime River was approached by them on the same day. They remained composed until they witnessed something that was beyond their understanding. When the water floated the remains of a young girl's body, specifically limbs and a skull. Frustrated, the fishermen contacted authorities who quickly arrived at the scene. Laura Lopez, a young girl from Plaudier, was quickly recalled by officers. Had been missing for less than 3 days. Her physical form was not familiar. The police were unsure of her identity and continued their search in the area to discover any indications of the victim's identity. In the same river, they came across a torn-up fabric bag, tights, and shoes, undergarments. It was evident that the girl had been a victim of sexual assault, not just murder. The police contacted Laura's relatives after finding the clothing and inquired if they knew about it, would be able to spot it. The officers were unaware that the investigation would uncover the truth about the case. The method used to commit the crime was even more gruesome than what had been initially suspected. Plaudier, Argentina, was the birthplace of Laura Lopez on November 11, 2000. Her elder sisters, Melissa and Demaris, who were 18 years old when she was born, loved her from the first day. Laura's mother passed away when she was only 3 years old, and all 3 siblings were left as orphans, under the care of their father. Despite his initial efforts to provide for the family, the father eventually became addicted to alcoholism. A few years later, despite the challenges she faced, Laura was known for her sweet and loving nature. That's why her sister began referring to her as Cielo, a nickname that everyone who knew her would call her. She was referred to by her. The girl's father was laid off years later, necessitating them to find more work. At 18 years old, Cielo began vending fried pastries during the day. She went to high school in the evening, and during her free time from studying, she spent it doing something else: ensure the well-being of her nieces and nephews. At the onset of her schooling, she had aspirations of finding a good job to restore her financial stability. A sense of stability has been bestowed upon her family. Unluckily, something took place that prevented this from happening. Cielo and Demaris spent the entire day on September 12, 2019, drinking tea with each other. Demaris finished renovating the house. Her sister joked that she had never made tea like her before. Either way, it's a good thing. It was a pleasant day. Cielo later attended school, where her peers observed something sporadic about the routine. She chose to sit at the back of the class instead of her usual spot and left after 20 minutes, the conclusion of the lesson. A friend greeted Cielo as he returned home at approximately 11:30 p.m. They spent some time conversing, drinking a few drinks, and taking selfies for social media. At 3 a.m. they said their goodbyes, and Cielo admitted to feeling tired but having a plan for the future: to go to sleep. A message was sent by Melissa to Lisa the next day, inquiring if she had sought medical attention for her ear issues. She was unresponsive, anxious. Melissa contacted Demaris to inquire about Cielo's presence, which led to concern. The sisters of Cielo. She was nowhere to be found, and her phone was switched off. They contacted the police as they found no evidence of her presence for several hours. They were informed at the police station that they had to wait for 48 hours from the last news item. Cielo was last seen by them before they filed a missing person report. The officers speculated that she might have had a boyfriend, as it was believed to be common. Adolescents encountering a situation. Saturday was characterized by the absence of life to Cielo. The report was only accepted by the police at that point, leading to a search. Sadly, it was already too late. The Lemay River's breakwater area was the location where 2 fishermen were working on Sunday the 15th. Plaudier is just 15 kilometers away from where Cielo calls home. They remained composed until they encountered something that caught their attention. A young girl's body, including limbs and a skull, was said to be found floating in the water. They promptly informed the authorities about this. Upon arrival, the officers observed that the brutality had been extinguished with great force. The body is the subject of discussion. It was apparent that the person in question had a thorough understanding of knives. The search for clues in the area was ongoing, with detectives still searching for any leads. The individual affected. A fabric bag, leggings, and underwear were discovered in the same river, but completely destroyed. They came across 2 rings while conducting their search. Finally, officers searched the riverbed and found a blood-stained knife. Cielo's family was soon referred to by them. Demaris spotted the attire upon her arrival at the location, and without hesitation, she took action. Without hesitation, she confirmed that it was her sister's property. The fishermen discovered Laura Lopez's limbs and skull in the shallow waters downstream from where they accidentally found her. The discovery of a young woman's body in Lemay River was made by firefighters around 11:30 on Monday. It had already been entrusted to the Forensic Expert Corps for examination. The autopsy was performed by Dr. Carlos Gordillo. He ascertained that the death was caused by a severe blow to the head, leading to internal bleeding, a throbbing of the brain. A blow to the back of her head caused her to become unconscious. Cielo endured 2 to 4 hours of agony. She could have survived if she had been treated properly. Furthermore, her arms were found to have bruises, indicating that she had been beaten and had some facial trauma. struggled her way towards the attacker. Cielo's sister's fears were validated by the forensic expert. The discovery of intimate wounds on her body was a clear indication of sexual assault. He also said that the recognizable marks of cuts on her neck, arms, and legs mentioned that the culprit had a history of approaching on kitchen knives. The assailant's lack of medical or anatomical knowledge was emphasized, which further intensified the problem. The roster of suspects. The detectives were unaware of the individual accountable for this terrible crime. After 3:00 a.m. on Friday, they analyzed Cielo's mobile phone and discovered that it was lost. Her contact had been with a man named Alfredo Emilio Escobar. A mechanic by profession, he was 28 years old. He and Cielo were both students in high school, and he had a passion for hunting and fishing, inspiringly enabling him to wield a knife. The distance between the girl's home and his house was 2.5 kilometers and/or 20 blocks, which made it convenient. The reception of signals from the antennas is potent. The girl was contacted by this person 4 times on September 13th at 3:16, 3:22, and 3:36 a.m. The man. At that point, the antennas established that they were both at home. Then both mobiles were activated in the vicinity of the girl's abode. The phone of Cielo headed towards the city center and arrived at Escobar's residence by 5 a.m. The girl's WhatsApp story featured an alien emoji, and her phone was still being tracked down. The man's dwelling was where I found him. At 5:52 a.m., the girl's mobile phone ceased to function. There was no communication from her thereafter. The records also indicated that Escobar had not re-entered his cell phone until 11:05 p.m. the following day. A day that. In China Muerta, where Cielo was hiding, the antenna of a nearby telephone pole detected the phone during this time. Subsequently, the remains were uncovered. Escobar came back home at 12:05 p.m. on September 15th. The video was captured by 13 cameras, which cover both city cameras and private residences. The stores were also examined. 2 individuals whose names were revealed were shown in specific recordings from the early morning of September 13th. The physical features were reminiscent of those of Cielo and Escobar. The young girl's mobile phone was in a state of mobility at the same time. Escobar was the only suspect in this case without a doubt. This man was recognized by one of the agents during the investigation. He reminisced about encountering him on Highway 22 a year ago, which was the way they were crossing to meet up with their families, the towns of New Caen and Plotier. A patrol car was hit by a young man who had been driving at velocities of over 80 kilometers per hour. The hour is a crucial one. He refused to be arrested, and a lawsuit was brought against him. Escobar was on the brink of going to court for that incident, but now the charges were completely different. The situation is distinct and has a greater gravity. At 8:30 a.m. on September 17th, a police patrol was present at the scene, which was roughly 30 meters away from Escobar's residence, had been working diligently. A young man who looked like the suspect was spotted driving away from a Fiat Ducato minibus that they had observed. Exited. He was immediately recognized by the police based on his physical attributes, including his face shape, facial features, and hairstyle. He entered the house and later emerged with 2 adults around 60 years old. The trio got into a vehicle, heading towards Highway 22, without any suspicion. Police chased the vehicle for a while and found it stopped in an area of nowhere. The zone is situated roughly 30 meters away from a bridge that connects New Caen and Cipolletti. The elderly man and Escobar exited the vehicle simultaneously. The police proceeded to ask for identification. Escobar was accompanied by his father and another man, while his mother was in the car. It was evident that they were attempting to escape the city. The young man did not hesitate to undergo the procedure, but was visibly anxious. Shortly after, Escobar was brought to the police station, and his vehicle was seized. Following that, he was subjected to a medical examination. The examination revealed swollen areas on the knuckles of his right hand's fingers, consistent with the use of a punching hand. He sustained cuts and bruises on the palm of his right hand. Cielo's death occurred on the same day as a few days before. These findings led to Escobar being charged with the rape and murder of the girl. Despite his request to remain silent, he was detained in custody for 6 months. There was a fear that he might escape or interfere with the investigation. On September 1st, the first search warrant was issued at the Estrada Street residence, the location where the Escobar family made their home. The property was sizable, incorporating a construction site and 2 buildings in the back. Upon entering the sleeping area where Escobar was present, officers discovered fingerprints on the walls. The use of luminol to check them resulted in the discovery of bloodstains. A cloth stained with blood was also found by officers during the search. The situation worsened as they walked to the building that was behind the residence. Crumpled vegetation was found to have blood spots. Blood was also present on the gates, the right handle of a cart, and on one end of an infrared emitting device. A device. It was in this place that the blow that caused Cielo's death occurred, as could be seen. The search team found bloodstains at the location and then examined samples for comparison. The blood of the girl and Escobar was present. The fluid found on Cielo's body was also examined through DNA analysis. The lawyer representing Escobar stated that rape charges should not be brought up until the outcome is determined. We were seized. Nonetheless, the outcomes were achieved in a short time frame. The Ministry of Health's Central Laboratory scrutinized the samples collected during the outbreak. The victim and accused's genetic profiles are matched in the search. At the time of his arrest, Escobar was wearing sneakers and a knife was discovered at the river's bottom. They were also examined. Cielo was found to have DNA matching on both items. The victim's genital area was examined using 3 swabs. Escobar's DNA was compatible with one of them. As a result, investigators could already be certain that this individual had sexually assaulted the victim. The girl was killed, dismembered, and disposed of the corpse. The confirmation was made by law enforcement officials during a press conference on September 21st. Prosecutor Juan Agustin Garcia said he believed Escobar was guilty of the crime. He accused Cielo of murdering him to cover up his rape and stated that he could be prosecuted in the event of a guilty verdict, could be sentenced to life in prison. Similar to this, more evidence was still required. Technology played a significant role in Escobar's discovery, even though he did not plead guilty. The court ordered the seizure of his mobile phone, and he was required to furnish the access code. Scrutiny. Despite having Cielo as one of his contacts, it was discovered that he had removed her from the conversation on the night. The disappearance of her. The victim's call history was deleted by him, but their social security number was not removed. Dialogues with the media. The suspect's actions on September 11th, 12, and 13 were also revealed during the investigation. Visited the social media site to check out pictures shared by Cielo. Escobar maintained his innocence despite the evidence against him. Nevertheless, the evidence indicated that he was accountable for the murder. Ultimately, a conclusion was reached concerning the events that transpired on the night of the crime. On September 12, 2019, Cielo departed from school at approximately 8 p.m. After spending time with a friend, she stated that she was tired and would go to sleep. Sleeping is the purpose of this. She was contacted by Escobar at 3:40 in the morning, and they started a conversation. She and him were not friends, but she agreed to meet him, and they went back to his house. The events that occurred inside the house remained unanswered. Nonetheless, the research indicates that Cielo refrained from having personal encounters with Escobar. In a fit of rage, he sexually assaulted her. He took his own life out of fear that she might report him to the authorities. He escorted her to the backyard, hitting her on the head twice. Cielo was alive at that point, and Escobar acted cruelly by hiding her body for several hours. In order to avoid being caught unawares, he also shut down his phone. Cielo's body had been lying in the shed for almost a day, and she passed away due to the injuries. The body was dismembered with a sharp knife that Escobar had hidden in his kitchen. He loaded the body parts into his Fiat Ducato minibus and drove for 15 kilometers to reach his destination, the area where the breakwaters are located. He came back to the location and turned on his phone, feeling relieved and contemplating. The conclusion was reached. This case has become a public concern for the entire city. Neuquén has strongly denounced the accused. The statement made by Escobar's younger sister, who is 23 years old, was the most powerful. She posted a message on her social media profile that addressed both her brother and the victim. The publication was met with a range of responses. Some people sympathized with her situation, while others accused her of complicity. In the midst of these assaults, the girl requested that Cielo and her team remain attentive. Her family is a part of it. Melissa subsequently got in touch with Escobar's sister, expressed her gratitude for the message, and requested an explanation. It's time for people to cease attacking the girl since she has no history of harm. The criminal case was immediately pursued by the prosecution. The initial court proceedings were conducted in the Provincial Legislative Assembly. According to the Neuquén prosecutor, Escobar was fully responsible for his actions. The girl was allegedly killed through gender-based violence, in addition to other charges, the act of rape. In the same hearing, professionals who were involved in the examination of the attire discovered in that case. The river, in conjunction with the remains and evidence found in the man's house, provided their testimony. Testimonies. Florencia, Cielo's closest friend, was the most unexpected. She stated that Escobar had been sending messages to the victim for several months, inviting her to join him, to socialize and enjoy a drink. Despite this, they had never met before. She stated that she had been acquainted with him for 5 years and was aware that he didn't have it, a highly commendable standing. Parties at Escobar's house had been a regular occurrence over the years. The house was strewn with alcohol and psychoactive substances. Intimate liaisons were openly shared by couples. According to Florencia, she had advised her friend against dating Escobar on multiple occasions. The girl consistently replied with a refusal to respond and an inability to reply to his messages. The defense questioned why she had not suggested blocking Escobar's number. In response, Florencia stated that her friend had made the decision and she didn't want to dictate anything. Her life. They exhibited the girl's surveillance camera footage while she was on the stand, the day that Cielo went missing. They exhibited her a recording from Ear at 4 a.m., which showed 2 individuals standing on opposite sides of the screen, individuals heading towards the central district of the city. Florencia reluctantly acknowledged that it was Cielo. She affirmed that her sneakers, jacket, and walking style were unmistakable. The girl also recognized Escobar. The testimony of Escobar's friend exposed his impulsiveness, as the judge accused him of infidelity. His behavior was marked by substance abuse and womanizing tendencies. His ex-partner was also present in court. According to her, their relationship ended in a negative way many years ago. She reported him to the authorities as she believed he had burglarized her home and stolen money. Money. When she reached out to him to ask for the money back, he ran after her friend who was with her. The defendant attempted to defend himself after examining the testimonies. Escobar pointed to his friend, who sold him illegal substances, as the actual offender, the offense committed. That night, I was in a state of unconsciousness. My admission is that I have committed the act of removing blood and discarding it. He stated to the local media that he had not committed murder. According to him, he was intoxicated that evening, and this individual was also under the influence of drugs, in his residence with Cielo. After hearing a scream from one of the rooms, Escobar immediately went to investigate. Had taken place. The blood was visible, and he proceeded to clean it up. He aided his friend in disguising the body. He expressed gratitude towards them for allowing him to share his supposed story at the end. The truth is what matters most. Despite the lack of evidence, this statement was not validated. Escobar was the lone suspect. The prosecutor stated in his closing argument that this man exploited the fact that they betrayed the victim's trust by being somewhat familiar with her. He orchestrated the cruelness of his behavior and the gruesome method of disposing of the remains. Alfredo Emilio Escobar received a unanimous verdict after the jury deliberated for only 40 minutes, convicted of raping and murdering Laura Cielo Lopez, aged 18. The charge that the latter one was brought up was made worse because it was aimed at hiding the attack. The issue of gender violence was a part of it. Due to these reasons, he was given a life sentence with no chance of release. The Cielo Lopez law, which was passed by the Neuquén provincial government, has been in effect since then. Strive to eradicate violence against women. All ages, including students and teachers, are required to receive training on gender violence. Fortunately, he was not forgotten, and a life sentence is reassuring. The victim cannot be brought back to life by involving society and the family, as per Marcelo Henriques, the family's lawyer in Velasco. The conclusion of this harrowing tale is, if you found the video engaging, please consider subscribing and liking it. Additionally, feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section. Drake was present with you. Watch the next video for you. Hello everyone, this is Drake speaking, and today I have prepared a breakdown of a horrifying criminal case for you. A garbage collector was paralyzed on January 22, 2023, after sifting through a trash container near the Columbia Park to find what was at the bottom of it. A blue suitcase was inside, sealed with black tape, and surrounded by several garbage bags. The suitcase contained a woman's body, which was easily identified because her head was visible from the suitcase. The worker was frightened upon finding something, so he drove several blocks and reported it to the police. The Capitol Police promptly dispatched a team of officers to investigate. Can you provide some examples? The police officers who arrived were met with a horrifying scene. The corpse was cradled in the suitcase and taken away. Valentina Tres Palacios was identified as the victim a few hours later. At the outset, the body was found to be free from any indications of violence, firearms, or knives, and it was not dismembered. Can you provide some examples? After opening the suitcase, detectives discovered that the woman was wearing pajamas with a belt, suggesting that she had been attacked while sleeping by the person who killed her. A black cardboard box on the side of the suitcase contained items that helped identify the body. Police found a student ID, password used by the victim when applying for a certificate, as well as some documents and personal belongings among them. The investigating team found it peculiar, as the presence of documents in such cases was not typical. Can you provide some examples? The police contacted the woman's family after finding the suitcase with her body, and they confirmed that she was with friends on Saturday, January 21st. The woman was found to have been struck multiple times in the head during the forensic examination. Her body was found with multiple injuries, including bleeding from the right part of her tongue and 5 cuts around her neck that indicated strangulation. Valentina Tres Palacios was born on December 16, 2001 in Bogotá, Colombia. She was enrolled in the Faculty of Commerce and International Business. The girl was a music enthusiast from an early age. After completing her professional DJ diploma, she was granted access to work as a DJ in Colombia due to her exceptional talent and musical sense. She had a career that began 3 years ago and resulted in many foreign friends. Valentina traveled to other countries, where she typically gained knowledge or exhibited her accomplishments. She had the chance to perform alongside some of the most renowned musicians during this period. She toured over 20 cities in the country and was present at significant international events of this kind. Her past activities involved performing at festivals and touring throughout Colombia, Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and Peru. People in her vicinity claimed that she had a bright future ahead. She was sought after and traveled throughout the nation. She dominated the best nightclubs and pursued her passion. Valentina was a very happy, smiling young girl who enjoyed the party. She maintained social media accounts where she shared her stage performances and always kept her followers informed about her daily routine. Can you provide some examples? In the electronic music industry of Colombia, she was recently recognized as the best amateur DJ. The girl shared about 2 things on her social media: her rising popularity in the electronic music industry at nightclubs and her relationship with an American named John Poulos, whom she met online by the end of 2021. John and Valentina's communication skills improved as time passed. Valentina's initial desire for stability and commitment was not strong, but her relationship with him transformed into a romantic partnership that the young people eventually shared. John Poulos, was a resident of America. Valentina was so invested in her life that he sent her money to attend a cosmetic course that involved injecting her lips with hyaluronic acid. The procedure was repeated to improve her cheekbones, and John also suggested surgery and silicone breast implants for his partner, modifying her appearance within a few months and becoming the talk of the town. He started sending money to the girl on a regular basis and eventually came up with the idea of marrying her. Originally, Poulos had plans to move to Colombia and live with Valentina, but she was skeptical because this person was so envious that he hired a private detective to track all her contacts and activities. Valentina's family was highly suspicious as she expressed her concern about this situation. John Poulos was prepared to spend the rest of his life with his partner by January 2023. He was committed to marrying Valentina and initiated the process of organizing the necessary paperwork. He rented an apartment in the northern area of Bogotá, where he planned to spend the weekends with the girl until they found a permanent place to live. On Thursday, January 19th, Poulos arrived in Bogotá. Around 8:53 p.m., he was caught on surveillance footage entering the building's apartment. Along with him, there was a blue suitcase that bore resemblance to the one used to find Valentina's corpse. John Poulos was the first person to be noticed after the disturbing discovery, as he was also the last one to have seen Valentina alive. The detective's attempt to reach him resulted in the call being diverted to voicemail. Valentina's family members found Poulos to be a kind and collected individual. His demeanor was undeniable, and his plans to marry the young woman were evident. They were unable to fathom his involvement in this terrible crime, but these doubts were eliminated when investigators arrived at the apartment rental building, where it was discovered that the man had already left and was not found. On Monday, January 23rd, John Poulos took down his social media profiles in the early morning following Valentina's death. He was the sole suspect at that point. The revelation was made evident when investigators analyzed the surveillance camera footage in the building. From Friday evening to early Sunday morning, the Colombian police and prosecutor's office examined hours of video footage from cameras in the areas where the young woman and her boyfriend were. The trash container was where the body was disposed of at this point. The footage and numerous WhatsApp conversations were instrumental in uncovering the girl's final hours. On January 20th, Valentina and Poulos made a deal to meet. Can you provide some examples? The man arrived on the 19th, the day before, and took up residence in the apartment where the couple had planned to live. After he texted Valentina, they started arguing on the same night because she was at a party with her friend and didn't anticipate him coming over. He inquired about the presence of significant individuals at the gathering and whether she was with any male. She wryly replied with a no reply, stating that it was his suspicions and they had agreed to meet on the 20th. Prior to meeting John, Valentina had planned to visit various locations to care for herself, apply her lash extensions, and attend hair salons. On January 20th, the couple were unable to see each other due to their disagreement, and only in the evening, when Valentina's apartment was being monitored by surveillance cameras, did they know exactly when they were in that parking lot. The girls' possessions were being packed by John at 6 p.m. as the two of them moved to another apartment and began a new life. Valentina's journey across the country was marked by a series of emotional goodbyes, one of which was with her family and friends. She made a video call to her mother saying that she was going home. The video depicts the girl accompanied by Poulos, who hired a vehicle to transport Valentina's possessions. They were caught on surveillance footage entering the apartment with their possessions at 7 p.m. Valentina sent her mother a series of videos showing the apartment and their frequent exchanges to get things. The cameras captured them completing the move and engaging in other activities before heading back to their new home. It was Saturday, January 21st at 1 a.m. Around 3 a.m., the couple arranged a taxi to go to southeastern New York's nightclub, where Valentina was set to perform. 2 hours later. Can you provide some examples? The club was reached by them at approximately 4 a.m. Valentina commenced work almost immediately. While she was busy, John Poulos remained with her. Can you provide some examples? At approximately 5 a.m., her performance concluded. Valentina and John, holding hands, headed to the nightclub's office. They encountered the proprietor of the establishment, his spouse, and her companion. Valentina's friends had not seen her since they left the venue at 6 a.m. Her smile was back on her face, shining brightly, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. Valentina contacted her friend on the phone and stated that she had no intention of going anywhere on Saturday. She stated that she would probably stay in the apartment with her partner. Later on, they might go out to eat or cook together at their house. The last time Valentina spoke to her friend was at 9 p.m., and it was through video. Valentina's mother, Laura Hidalgo, revealed that her 13-year-old son was the final individual to converse with her on video. The girl was in bed with John. They both appeared to be in a state of happiness. The family had no further information about them. On January 21st, at 10:43 p.m., surveillance cameras in the building captured the young woman and her boyfriend. In the video, Valentina can be seen peering out of the apartment door while John stands in front of it. He seems contemplative and a little menacing, pacing back and forth, occasionally grimacing his face. He orders the elevator to go down and retrieve a delivery. Poulos was captured by the cameras again on Sunday, January 22nd at 9 a.m. He exits the room with 2 bags of garbage. Valentina was nowhere to be found on this occasion. The man drives to the parking area, takes a silver car, and places the bags in the back seat. Following that, he goes back to the apartment and retrieves 2 suitcases from the trunk. Subsequently, he heads back to the apartment. A gray blanket covers the suitcase that Poulos removed from the apartment, where the clock reads 10 a.m. He put it into a cart for shipping. A second bag was situated beside it. Valentina's head was wrapped in a blanket. The man surveys the parking area after parking. He perceives that nobody is in the vicinity. Moving ahead, he looks over to make sure nobody is going down in the elevator. Subsequently, he rapidly makes his way back to the vehicle. He glances at the mirror one last time and takes a sip of water before struggling to lift the heavy suitcase, which he puts in the trunk. The bag is the next item on the list. Subsequently, he takes control of the vehicle and departs. Surveillance cameras caught the car at different locations throughout the city around noon. It was evident that the subject was in search of a suitable spot to leave the suitcase. The car entered one of the parks and parked near the garbage containers at approximately 3 p.m. The driver exited and headed towards the container at that juncture. He surveyed the area, verified that no one was watching, and then removed the suitcase, which seemed excessive, before tossing it into the container. He went back to the car and removed the bag, which he then placed in the trash bin, closed the lid, and exited. The vehicle was traveling westward until it reached El Dorado International Airport. John's last known whereabouts were at the airport at 4:30 p.m. A $1 million reward was announced by the Ministry of Security on Monday, January 23rd, for any information that could lead to the arrest of the person or persons responsible for the murder of Valentina Tres Palacios. The Colombian authorities enlisted the help of Interpol to issue an arrest warrant, as Poulos fled the country's border without indicating why. Additionally, he was the final person to witness the girl's existence. Can you provide some examples? On January 24th, the National Police of Panama stated that they had apprehended Poulos at El Dorado International Airport while he was traveling to Turkey. In an effort to obtain answers about Valentina's death, Colombian authorities quickly began the process of deporting him to the country. Over 14 criminal investigation specialists contributed to the investigation, collecting evidence to establish the facts. The analysis of over 300 hours of video footage from cameras was the outcome of methodological work carried out in partnership with the country's prosecutor office. The case yielded another crucial finding after the arrest of this individual. Valentina's mobile phone was discovered near the El Dorado International Airport by a security staff member. He stumbled upon a mobile phone on the grass while walking near a 10th-of-a-minute gas station and picked it up. The man brought the discovered gadget home after he realized that it did not have a SIM card. He took the phone to sell it, unaware that it belonged to Valentina. The security guard's wife called him hours later in despair when she realized that the photo of the girl and the wallpaper on the mobile phone were identical to those seen on social media, and also for the young woman found dead in the trash container. Unfortunately, the phone had already been marked for sale and repackaged because someone was willing to buy it. Therefore, information that could have been advantageous in this situation went unguarded. Can you provide some examples? Following that, the driver of the car that the couple had driven to the nightclub gave his testimony, which was followed by a big question. The driver was tasked with transporting the couple to a nightclub located in the southern part of the city. Before getting into the car, Poulos paused for a moment before Valentina exited. She got into the car and screamed that she had written something untoward. The driver looked at her in disbelief before checking his phone and finding out that Tres Palacios had sent him a message to customer care, warning him in Spanish that he was in danger. The driver looked at the girl and inquired if she was all right, but her response was uncertain as Poulos entered the car and asked. She said, "Are you okay?" John and Valentina conversed in English as the car was being driven, and the man asked if they were bilingual, to which he replied with a positive answer. Poulos remained silent and instead corresponded with Valentina on WhatsApp. Upon leaving about 4 a.m., the driver went to the nightclub with the couple and then forgot about the incident until he was informed of the young woman's death several days later. Due to Valentina's open WhatsApp session, her friend who lived in Cartagena came to the prosecutor office in Bogota and surrendered their computer, with the chats providing clues about what had occurred. One of the pieces of evidence found in Valentina's chat was that her friend had spotted a suitcase with her body, which was said to have been there. The friend said that on the same day Valentina was in Bogota, she got a text from Poulos and received several selfies with his luggage. The suitcase that John brought with him was akin to the one found by authorities in the container. The color was indistinguishable. There's no clear answer as to why the young girl left her WhatsApp session open on her friend's computer, but all of these texts helped authorities get what happened that night when Valentina was killed. It was determined by forensic investigators that she died from asphyxiation, caused by tightly strangled with a rope. Prior to her passing, there were indications on her body that she had been a victim of violence. All indications from the forensic examination indicate that Valentina Tres Palacios passed away while sleeping. This conclusion was drawn up by criminalists because she was wearing pajamas. There is no doubt in the evidence above that John Poulos was present. The indictment stated that the suspect did not acknowledge responsibility for the girl's death, citing the current situation and the concealment of evidence. Rather, he said, "There were violations when I was arrested in Panama because we did not have a lawyer to talk to." Poulos's Spanish language skills were not strong enough to warrant a translator, and the hearing lasted for more than 5 hours. The crime committed by Poulos is attributed to his involvement with Valentina, and he attempted to disappear without trace, erasing his social media accounts after the incident. On May 19, 1987, John Poulos was born in Wisconsin, United States. He had 3 children and was previously wedded in his native land. His criminal record included charges of violence against women, including obtaining a restraining order against his ex-wife. The use of pornographic websites was reported by a woman to whom John Poulos had sent money, who claimed that this person was actively browsing. According to her, he spent approximately 5-6 hours daily on the site, and she mentioned that despite being a man, his behavior was often bizarre in nature, such as fantasizing and recounting ghost stories. Another model who testified on a modeling page said she knew the American from Texas, America. She ceased writing to him after a peculiar comment he made, which included the words jealousy and death. John's question was, "If I were at a bar, would you be willing to talk to me?" The girl refused in response. "It's likely that one of us will die due to jealousy," replied Poulos. The witness stated that despite the subject having sent money to the magical lord, she never conversed with him on video because his communication was often unusual. It is important to acknowledge that John had certain conduct towards his victims. He contacted Valentina on social media and started sending her money with persistence and consistency in the case. This approach to women's treatment as property was a warning sign that the trusting women initially neglected, and Poulos believed he could purchase them with money from the outset. The factors were disregarded, leading to the possibility that the victim unintentionally stumbled into her abuser's trap and was eventually recognized due to his own mistake. The authorities involved in this case are assuming that John thought the waste disposal system in Colombia was equivalent to that in the United States, where he resided. According to him, the waste material had settled in the container and would eventually be disposed of. Poulos did not assume that recycling workers and street dwellers frequently sift through garbage to discover items that can be sold or employed as something. John Poulos is being held in a private cell in Bogotá today. Now all that remains is to demonstrate that all these pieces of evidence connect the individual to the crime and to discover the motive behind this dreadful murder. In Colombia, the criminal code provides for a prison sentence of up to 50 years for a crime in which an American is accused. With the assistance of a special group formed by the Capitol Police in coordination with the country's Attorney General's office, criminal investigators will be engaged in the search for material evidence to clarify this fact. Such cases once again demonstrate to us how dangerous social networks can be when getting to know someone. Valentina thought she had found love and someone with whom she would spend the rest of her days. However, this did not happen, and like many people in the world, she too thought that nothing like this would happen to her. Thank you for watching. I recommend watching other true crime stories. Click right now and don't forget about the bell to not miss new stories. Until we meet again, take care of yourself.